So,
That's not Perry.
that's not Perry.
Far from it.
Someone else entirely. Am I a giant? Like, I feel like, sorry. Can you guys hear me okay? Is this all right? Okay, all right, just checking.
We're going to go through a few news items. The first one is the recent interview between Charlie Sheen and President Barack Obama. Anyone
Hear about this
hear
week?
about that interview, which actually never took place?
Yeah.
It took place in Charlie
his head.
Sheen's mind. Yeah, it
Yeah.
took place in his mind.
It's also on this blog called Prison Planet. Anyone know Alex Jones? Radio, yeah, right? 9/11 truther of some fame. So what Charlie Sheen did this week to, of course, to commemorate in his own mind the tragedy of what happened on 9/11 is he sat down and wrote a little, well, let's say it'd be an occurrence, say how it would be if he were to have 20 minutes to sit down with President Obama so that he could tell him and he could present him with the facts of 9/11 and so that President Obama could really get to the bottom of what really happened that day. And, basically what it is just an exercise that Charlie went through to bring up the same old points, nothing new. It's all been hackneyed and pulled apart and thoroughly debunked, especially by skeptics who over the years have done an excellent job of keeping people like, Charlie Sheen, Alex Jones, and their likes down from making this spread much worse and much further than it certainly could have. And it's just this dialogue. And if you go to Prison Planet, you can actually prisonplanet.com. You can actually read it. And
It's so obviously scripted. I was reading it before he revealed that it didn't happen. I didn't figure it really did, but it's so obviously scripted when you read it. I mean, it was,
I don't
So
know. I
Obama
thought it was
actually
his,
spoke. He spoke back. That's like
yeah.
Yes.
He wrote Obama's
He wrote a play.
end of the
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah.
basically wrote a play.
Yeah, it's kind of like having God talk back to you. That's like,
I thought it was Charlie Sheen's best work since Hot Shots Part 2. Personally speaking.
And his worst, all at
But-
the same time.
His main point seemed to be that there are members of the 9/11 Commission who are now saying that the official version of events as laid out in their report is not accurate.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. This is, again, very typical of conspiracy theorists. Sure, there are people who think that the Bush administration are whitewashing some of the details of 9/11, probably to hide the fact that they screwed up, that this happened on their watch, and maybe they didn't respond optimally to the events as they were unfolding, and certainly they didn't prevent it from happening. That's what the 9/11 commissioners are talking about, especially those that are in the Democratic Party who are saying, hey, we really needed to go after the Bush administration for their failure about this. But he is throwing that out there as if they're saying that it was an inside job and the Bush administration orchestrated 9/11. That's the implication he's leaving out there. And that's, again, a very typical conspiracy kind of strategy of making something appear more sinister than it is, and rather than providing evidence that something actually happened, just trying to make it seem like there's some mystery. And then they want to fill the mystery with, of course, their paranoid conspiracy thinking, right?
Yeah, and at the same time, he also goes, in addition to all that, he goes back and he brings up the whole thing about how World Trade Center building number 7, could not have possibly collapsed as a result of this terrorist attack. It had to be a planned implosion. That's where the CIA had headquarters or their offices or some such thing. And if you look at this side of the building, you can see there's hardly any damage. It's the same old stuff.
but Evan, he's clearly a structural engineer.
No, he
Yeah, well, he
played
played-
one,
yeah, he
I think,
plays
in
one,
2.5 Men. I don't know. I've never actually seen it. I assume.
1.5 brains. But do you remember the Popular Mechanics report that came out years ago? You probably recall it, which basically gave you the gist of what actually went on from an engineering standpoint and how
The gist from NIST, right?
yeah, and how it all went down. I mean, apparently Charlie Sheen and Alex Jones and all these people, and there's a whole list of celebrities that have questions about 9/11. They totally ignore this, and they ignore these facts of science, and it just doesn't play into his nice little script that he wrote here. So it's a combination of this sort of extreme political ideology, and lack of paying attention to any of the science involved.
Did he have Obama say anything interesting, or was it all kind of like, yes, I agree?
Actually,
No,
Obama
actually-
came across as slightly rational in it. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
He can't even do that right. He can't even set up
Obama's
an
like,
appropriate
oh, Charlie,
target.
you're so funny.
Can I feel your bicep? I love doing Hot Shots Part 2.
Oh, Charlie. Charlie bit me.
Bit my finger, Charlie.
But the other thing that they do is that they cherry pick.
Oh, yeah.
And this actually came up at DragonCon last weekend. Rebecca was on a panel with Adam Savage, and there was a ambush question, right? The 9/11 truther asked a question about the nanothermite discovered in New York City, and of course, you get thrown a question like that without preparation. You don't know what the hell they're cherry picking. So nobody knew what the answer was that he was specifically asking. But I had a week now to look it up and try to
The
find out.
study that he...
The study.
in a
And
peer-reviewed journal.
what it is they found not nanothermite, but a chemical that could result from nanothermite, and it turns out the same chemical could also be found in melted computers, which there's an estimate of there was maybe like 10,000 computers probably melted down in the middle of the towers, so that probably has something to do with it. But again, if you don't know that factoid off the top of your head, it's hard to field those
Or
questions.
Steve works for the Bush administration. Nobody knows it.
Yeah, our answer on the panel at the time was just, if you've got evidence, show us. But there's been no new evidence in
Right.
8 years. Go away. Sorry. Because his question was specifically, do you feel that there's any bias in the skeptical community against hot political issues? And then he brings up this paper in a peer-reviewed journal, and we all just look at each other, and Adam Savage goes, I detect a little bit of bias in the question. And then we basically shot him down.
Now, our good friend Perry this was one of the topics he felt most passionately about. Perry was a big patriot, certainly of this country, and he took great exception to the 9/11 truthers and the Charlie Sheens of the world and so forth. And Rebecca, when you said, go away, yeah, that would be nice if these people would go away, but it's because of people like Charlie Sheen and a few other people that I have listed here: Rosie O'Donnell, Michael Moore, Sharon Stone, Martin Sheen, Ed Asner, Ed Blakely Jr., David Lynch, Mos Def, Harry Belafonte, Woody Harrelson. The list goes on. There are hundreds of these people out there that are perpetuating or trying to perpetuate the mythology behind 9/11. And it's because of the work of skeptics that have largely kept these people at bay, and we've beat them off with sticks. And imagine how much worse this would have become in our culture if it wasn't for us, the skeptics doing the hard work.
James Brown was a 9/11 truther.
No, James Brolin.
Oh, it's not James Brown?
No, James Brolin.
That did not sit right with me.
James Brolin.
Those buildings fell, wow! Get back!
The list goes
Eminem
on
is
and
on, that's
on.
Eminem though, right?
Yeah, Eminem's on that
Man,
list.
he's a brightly burning torch, that guy.
Don't be dismissive, Jay.